Hello everyone, my name is Josh and this is Whimsical Ninja Musings, and today I'm going to be talking about the first episode of the television series Dead Ringers starring Rachel Weisz, based on the 1988 horror film, psychological drama film Dead Ringers starring Jeremy Irons. And that in itself was also based on a book by Jack Giesland and Barry Wood called Twins, which is kind of a fictionalized account of the real life Marcus twins, twin gynecologists, who basically went on a downward spiral when they became barbiturate addicts, and they basically died and they were found dead in their apartment in New York City. So this particular TV series it's a little bit different in the sense that instead of it following twin brothers, Dr. Beverly and Eliot Mantle, it is twin sisters, Dr. Beverly and Eliot Mantle, played by Rachel Weisz. And this particular episode is very interesting because to me it starts off very much like a day in the life kind of episode. It basically shows you them working on the labour wards, working through they're basically in the gynecology department. They basically specialise in birthings and deliveries, and they have to do C-sections and all sorts of other, techniques in order to make sure the babies and the mother are safely, taken care of during the time of labour. And this entire sequence, there's an entire montage at one point in this film, in this particular episode, where you just see very graphic depictions of babies being born headfirst through their mothers, essentially. And I really do think that's kind of that's one of the things that I will say, that if you are basically at all squeamish about seeing surgery scenes or scenes where, you're watching women give birth and you're seeing everything in its glory detail, I would definitely recommend giving this show a skip, because it definitely isn't for the faint heart. I definitely had moments where I was literally covering my mouth because of how graphic and how, that looked really, really, horrific. But what was very interesting is it could be kind of educational in the sense that, it's about, the miracle of life. But it does go a bit graphic, and if it does turn a lot of people off, I would definitely say give this show a skip. But I do think it is an interesting introduction to our main characters, because it shows how dedicated they are and how incredibly different they are as well, because even though they are very dedicated and they're very passionate in their own way, they both have different ways of doing so. Beverly is very quiet and very reserved. She's one of those people who, when she is in the consultation rooms and she's being a practitioner, she has her hair ponytailed up and she wears sort of like a surgical hat to sort of hide her hair or sort of cover up her hair. So like she's very kind of sterile and very careful. She's very, obsessed with research as well. Like whenever they're having a good time, Elliot will be having cocktails with her friends and she'd be like, on her iPad doing research. But what's very interesting is that Elliot is completely utterly the opposite. She's dedicated, but she's not afraid to show her teeth, and she's not afraid to kind of be a bit tenacious. She reminds me, if I'm gonna make a comparison, and this is probably the only time when I'm actually gonna reference this show, she reminds me a lot of Sandra Oh's character in Grey's Anatomy, Christina Yang, who is in herself a very competitive person, but you can tell that she is very dedicated and she is very passionate. She just has a very kind of gung-ho and very tenacious personality, which a lot of people can find rather cold and clinical, but she really has a way of making it rather endearing. And it's the same with Rachel Weisz. She manages to make Elliot a really endearing character, because she does have moments where she does kind of think to herself, screw this. I don't know why I'm doing this. Like, why am I doing this when in reality all I'm actually doing is just prolonging the inevitable? I'm failing at, giving birth to these babies, and sometimes babies die, sometimes mothers bleed out, and you have to deal with the fallout. And she basically is having those moments where she's like, fuck this. Why am I doing this? Like, why do I let this get to me? Why do I, push myself even harder? And that's really quite wonderful, because usually when, in comparison to the original, and I'm going to be comparing it to the original a lot whenever it comes to this episode by episode talk, because I do feel like it's important to reflect back on the original and what Jeremy Irons effectively did, and what Jeremy Irons would later go on to do throughout his careers. He basically plays Elliot as very kind of when you see him in the original, he is pretty much the voice of Mantling. He's the face of Mantling, whereas he's the one who makes all the public appearances. If he was a celebrity, he'd be the one on the red carpet. He'd be the one doing interviews. He'd be the one, answering questions. He'd be the one handling the mob of reporters. Whereas Beverly is one of those people who really much likes to stay behind closed doors and remain anonymous, even though he is there. He is, talking about stuff. He is doing the work, but it's just he doesn't like to show his face that much because he's shy and he's quite reserved, but he is passionate still. He is very dedicated. But it's the same thing with Beverly and Eliot here. Eliot is dedicated, but she also has moments where she can be a little bit too gung-ho, and she can be a little bit too forward-thinking and too diving head first into things, so to speak. But she also knows when to speak up and when to speak her mind, which I really do like. There are moments in this episode where she does actually tend to make things worse for her sister, but what I really like is that there's a very familiar enough rapport to the point where you actually think, oh, this is professionals and their sisters talking as well. It doesn't feel awkward in any way, or it doesn't feel like, oh, they're trying too hard to be like the original, or they're trying too hard to do something different. They actually do make them very realistic, and I think that's down to the writing by Alice Birch and the performance of Rachel Weisz. And I really do like the Mantle twins in this one. I really do. I really could have, but because of course she's played by Rachel Weisz, and of course the fact that she is cast in this role, a lot of people know her as Evie O'Connell from the Mummy series, the Brendan Fraser Mummy series. She was also in The Lovely Bones. She's in a lot of stuff. She's in a film called Fred Claus as well. She's in a lot of films. And she's often more often than not. Sometimes she's the best part about a film. Usually, she's kind of like the British Jennifer Aniston. Whenever you see her, you're kind of like thinking to yourself, "Oh my god, I'm so glad that Jennifer Aniston's in this film," because she could often be the best part about a film, because just her being there is a sign that she really is, trying to lift this very kind of not very good material. But this show could very easily work without her. I think what really is interesting is that she manages to really kind of give this character. She is crucial to the story in the sense that she's playing his performance. But what I think is very interesting is that the story is still compelling enough to the point where I want to know what's going to happen, even though I know roughly where it's going to go. And people who have seen the original know where this is going to go. We know where this is all eventually going to end. But what's very interesting is that Rachel Weisz makes these characters so likeable that you don't want anything bad to happen to them, because you really are, happy with the fact that they're dedicated. They're a bit too gung-ho and a bit too tenacious, but that's what makes them work. That's what makes them dedicated doctors, as it were. And it really does add a lot of dimension and a lot of time to what happens later on in the story. And it pretty much follows beat for beat like the original film, in the sense that it starts off with them kind of, climbing the ladder, trying to, get their jobs done and do it as efficiently and effortlessly as possible. But it isn't just simply a case of, oh, let's just recreate the film. Again, it's a day in the life kind of story, where it starts off with them kind of, getting in their, residential outfits, them walking around, them, seeing to their patients, them reading the charts, them doing consultations, them arranging appointments, doing all the rest of it. But they always add personality and humour to a lot of the things that they do. And I think it really adds so much when you really do have these very depressing moments in your day where you're just thinking to yourself, okay, I'm going to step back and let the other residents take a hand, because they are seniors now. They're no longer, interns or anything like that. They are, professional doctors who have to monitor other students as well. So they are, they know when to back away as well from patients. But I love the fact that they do really care about their patients, even people who just turn up. And there's even this one moment which I really do like, where she goes, how long has she been, having these contractions? And the person who is with this woman goes, off and on throughout the past 3 days. And then she just turns to him and goes, "You're joking, right? Like, really? You saw her making these, noises and these aches, and you just literally let her stay at home?" And he says, "Well, she wanted a home birth, so of course we had to, make sure that her requests were fulfilled." And then that goes on to a scene which I thought was really powerful, because it leads to a premature birth, which leads to the death of the child. And that was a very heartbreaking scene when Elliot basically looks at the baby as it's being pushed out, and she just literally knows right away that this baby is stone cold pale. And it's really sad. It's really heartbreaking. It was one of those moments where I had to pause the episode and actually, collect myself and, really kind of prepare myself. Because it is tough. It is a really tough watch. And I'm not going to lie, I did get a little bit weepy on certain scenes. Like, there's this one patient who they have who is a woman who's just had a C-section. She's just delivered a baby girl. And she basically is experiencing pains in her lower abdomen after the stitching, and she thinks, oh, maybe it's the stitching, or maybe it's, the cesarean, something's gone wrong with the cesarean, it's kind of, causing complications. She just bleeds out, and she ends up, dying. They can't save her in time, and it's really heartbreaking when one of the residents is telling the dad, who has the baby in his arms, that his wife's dead, and that was such a heartbreaking scene, and the actor who played that character really did such a good job of selling that moment of like, oh, it's horrible because his wife's dead, and I found it really heartbreaking, and I really kind of, again, that was another moment where I had to pause it and collect myself. Like, I thought, how awful, like, it's awful that you have this plan that you're going to have this family together, and you're going to raise this family, and you're going to have a good time, and it's all going to be it's going to be their first time, so obviously there are going to be bumps in the road, but then you're obviously going to, be united by the love that you have for this child. But now this child goes into the world knowing that their mother is dead, and that's something that really is quite heartbreaking to watch. So I couldn't help but think about stuff like that. But that was one of the things that really endeared me to the Mantle twins, is they had moments where they're like, I can't believe I do this shit. Like, what am I doing wrong? What am I, doing that's causing so much, problems? And I like that about Elliot, and Elliot has that moment, but also Beverly does as well. But Beverly is more clear-headed. She knows what she's going to do even before she enters the surgical ward. She knows exactly what she's going to do. She has a plan. She has it all worked out in her head. So she's very on top of things, even when she's out drinking, and Beverly's kind of like doing her dancing in the club, and she's like got her hair down, and she's literally, drinking shots and things like that, and hooking up with guys. Beverly's just sitting there on her iPad, just scrolling through, grids and graphs and all these other things and diagrams, and making notes and things like that. There's even a scene where they're in a nightclub and it's very dark, and there's a lot of strobe lighting, like coloured strobe lighting around, and this guy literally walks up to her and he's about to talk to Beverly, and she's like going, no, fuck off, I'm busy. And I love that she's just so in the zone that she's like, no, I can't do this now, I'm too busy, I'm in the middle of emotional breakthrough. I'm in the middle of a breakthrough here, you don't understand, kind of thing. And I love that. And there's so many good moments like that. Like, I really do think Rachel Weisz was probably the best casting if you were ever going to do a gender swapped version of this story. She definitely just adds more life and more relatability to, even more relatability than the original. The original had its moments, and I feel like Jeremy Irons really did a good job with playing this character. And I really did like the fact that I still get brokenhearted whenever I watch that scene in the original where Jeremy Irons as Beverly's literally sitting in Elliot's office, and he's saying about his lover Claire Nouveau that he's in love with her. That scene where he just says the words, I'm in love with her, it's just such a sad moment, and it really breaks my heart every time. So it gets me a little weepy every time. Like, it's such a powerful performance. So I love Jeremy Irons in both these roles. But Rachel Weisz does something really wonderful, which is she's able to really kind of add so much, she updates the characters. Like, what would these characters be like in the modern day? How would they behave? What would they be like? And of course, because their gender is different as well, they kind of have different attitudes towards different things as well. Like, say, there's a speech that Beverly gives when they're trying to get a grant from the Parkers, Rebecca Parker, who's essentially the head of this great global empire. And she's one of those rich, upper class, blonde-haired, horn-rimmed glasses, stirring the rim of a cocktail with a index finger kind of character. And she basically says, well, what are you going to do? I'm not in on your concept. I don't really feel like your pitch was very worth it. And she just goes, you know what? I just delivered a baby that died a few hours ago, and I literally feel so crap about it. And you know what I think it is? It's all to do with the system. The system has been making it so that, women have been giving birth for millions of years, since the beginning of time, and there's been no break for us. There's been no, sense of progress. There's been no sense of, development or any kind of, set way in which we do things. But we keep going. We keep trying to, come up with the answers, coming up with the rules, but we never find it. And we never find a solution for when, shit hits the fan, so to speak. And we always, try and do our best, but what I can guarantee you is that we will give you the best work that we can. And I don't give a fuck if you are, interested or if you're not interested, but we will give you exactly what you want. And if you're not in on it, then you can just go screw off. And I really like that. And she goes to stand up, and then Rebecca goes, no, don't say you can tell me to screw off and then just walk away. Don't tell me to screw off and walk away while you just screw off and walk away. Hey, you can't do that to me. You've got to, you've got to commit now. And I love that. And then it's just such a wonderful moment, and there's so many great scenes like that. Like, there's an instance where the mum who bleeds out after her cesarean, there's a shot where she is lying down in bed, soaked in blood. She's dead, essentially. Her bedding is soiled with blood, and it has that shot, and then it quick cuts to her sitting upright in the bed, and she's kind of like cradling the baby and playing with the baby and smiling and going, oh, mummy loves you, and things like that. But then it would cut, briefly to the shot again of her in the bed, all bloodied. And it's really quite wonderful. It's sad, obviously, but it really is a great shot, because it really shows the way your mind is when you're in that moment. Like, a few hours ago, she was up and about, she was smiling, she was happy, she was, about to become a mum, and then now her bedding's, absolutely stained with blood, bleached in blood, and she, is dead, essentially. She's now left behind a father and their daughter, and it really is heartbreaking to watch. Little moments like that really made me in on this show. And I love the fact that they weren't afraid to go in, and they were, able to show the graphic details, because that's one of the things that I really kind of think is kind of something that a lot of people do kind of say that, oh, we don't need to see all the gory details. But I think in this particular version of Dead Ringers, you need to see the gory details, because you just need to see what these women, both the women who are giving birth and the women who have to deliver the babies, have to go through. They have to deal with all this stress. They have to plan everything. They have to make sure that there are no complications when they go into that surgery room. And it really does present a very interesting drama. There were moments when I was watching this first episode where I actually found myself thinking, oh yeah, we're watching, a television series of Dead Ringers. Like, I didn't expect it to go in this sort of, one born every minute direction, where you're kind of thinking to yourself, okay, we're watching, a day in the life of these surgeons who are delivering babies. And it really kind of made you think to yourself, oh, this is actually pretty good. I could just watch an entire series of just that. But what I really love is that they really kind of show that's not what this is about. It's about these two characters who are trying to keep their bond together, keeping their bond strong, but then things go wrong. And there are little bits of the Dead Ringers plot kind of coming into focus in this first episode, because Beverly meets Genevieve Courtard, and she is an actress, and she is in the city of New York, doing a miniseries like Claire Nouveau in the original, and she has issues. Beverly kind of looks at her, examines her, and she finds that she has 3 uteruses. And this is, she even says it's heart-shaped. She gives a scan, and she gives an illustration of what it looks like. And this is the moment where the actual film comes into play, where they actually do decide to swap places. And Elliot pretends to be Beverly, and Beverly pretends to be Elliot to do her patients and things like that. But there's even a hint of that at the very start of the episode, like when they're talking over, like, oh, you have that one, I'm scared of that one. Or, oh no, I don't like that one, she's got a bad temper, you have that one. And she goes, fine, I'll have this one, but you have to have this one next week. Like, Like they'll point stuff out, and there are little hints of that throughout the episode. But I really do like the fact that they do show that they have swapped places before, and that does add a new layer of horror and almost anxiety, because you don't know which of the which of the Mantle twins you're seeing, who you're meeting, and I think that really adds a certain level of darkness to proceedings. But I like the fact that it doesn't shy away from anything. Even there's a scene where Eliot is basically doing a consultation, and the mother decides to go up to use the toilet for the umpteenth time. And while she's in the toilet, responding to the call of nature, Eliot basically says, "How are you doing, Daddy? We always ask how the mummies are doing, but no one ever, talks about the daddies and things like that. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Do you want a little, stress relief?" And she goes, "Oh, well, you need to, you've got about 30 seconds to show me something very special, don't you?" And I'm not even joking. The dad, without even doing a second thought, without doing a second take, decides to undo his belt and start, pleasuring himself in front of her. And I kept on thinking to myself, you can't do that. But yeah, I like the fact that you also see his crown jewels, so to speak. You see his crown jewels in all their glory, and I like that. I like the fact that they don't, hold back on showing any male nudity either. I'm so happy. It's so wonderful. But this entire show, this entire episode was a lot, but I really do think it's a good episode. It's a great show of things to come. I like the fact that it hints on there's something a bit off about Eliot and Beverly's relationship. I know it's a little bit obvious for people who know the film, but what's very interesting is they take it to new heights in this episode, because at the very end you see Eliot come home. Genevieve and Beverly have gone out on a date, and they go back to their apartment, and she says to Genevieve that she can't cook to save her life. So Genevieve decides to cook them something, and she goes into the fridge and she starts cooking. And then when Eliot comes home after being at the hospital, she decides to get up on the table. She doesn't take her shoes off. And I really do like the fact that she has these very nice blue high-heeled shoes. I actually thought, I want those shoes. It was like, they're so great, and I love how they caught the light. It was just so wonderful. Oh, but anyway, sidetrack. She gets up on the table, doesn't take her shoes off. She gets up on the table and she gets on her hands and knees, and then she starts eating the food and sniffing Genevieve's dress. And I kept on thinking to myself, oh, that's really, really creepy and really weird. And that's not where it ends, though, because there's a ton of other weird shit that happens in the majority of this series that I haven't even covered yet. So, this is very weird. But also, Beverly has been going to a grief counselling circle, like one of those Alcoholics Anonymous circles, where she basically has been going to cope with the grief of losing her sister Eliot. But here's the thing. Eliot isn't dead. Her sister isn't dead. So the fact that she's actually going to these meetings and she's pretending to be a grieving sibling who's just lost her sister, that really kind of makes me go, what? Like, what's going on here? What's happening? And I love that. I love that they have hooks like that. Like, why is she going to these places? Why is Eliot being creepy when it comes to, how she behaves around Genevieve and around her possessions and things like that? What's going on? And there's so many things that they just build and build and build. And it's really interesting. It really does make you go, okay, this is going to go in a slightly different direction to the original, but hopefully we're all going to the same place where we're eventually going to have the big finale. But there's so many other things that happen in the course of this show. And I really can't wait to talk to you guys about it in fuller detail. But let me know what you thought of this first episode. What did you think of, the overall layout? What did you think of the reinterpretation? Did you think Alice Birch and Rachel Weisz did a good job with the material? And Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and look forward to more episode by episode insights into this particular series, and I look forward to covering the rest of the series with you guys. And also, before I click off, I just want to say that next week, next Thursday, I will be looking at the first episode of Inside Number 9 Series 8. So if you are a fan of Inside Number 9, please be sure to stick around for my review of the first episode, A Mother's Ruin. And I can't wait for this series to come back. I really am excited. So until then, I will be basically doing my reviews for these individual episodes of Dead Ringers. And I hope you enjoyed this review. And I've been Josh with Whimsical and Interesting Musings. I hope you guys are all having a very good day. Take care. Bye-bye for now.